name as well. And so in short, I'm going to just give a really brief overview of the microgrant and what we're looking for in a strong application. So we'll go step by step into what appears in the narrative. Out of curiosity, have folks already started working on their application and opening an account via Submittable? Okay, so some heads nodding, some not. So that's totally fine. We'll go through all of that today. The objective of today is really to give you hands-on assistance in how to create a high-scoring application. And so, Luisana, would you like me to share, or will you share via Google?
Yes, I can share it.
Okay, thank you. Awesome. So just to give you guys, and good morning. I see some folks in the chat. Thanks, Jason, for being here as a past recipient. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Shakira. Awesome. So we're going to dive in today. Here you can see just a couple of photos of past winners and a lot of things that they've been able to purchase through the program. I'm glad you guys are here in the right place. This is the focus on our nonprofit applicants who have a somewhat different system and portal for accessing the application. So on the next slide, I'll just give you some really some basics about what you're going to take out of today. Get to know the microgrant, get to know the application structure, and see what we look for in a strong proposal. And then our colleagues, Jason, Mariela, and Ruth will talk with Brenda a little bit more about how they were able to successfully craft a good proposal. Next slide, please. So the bare basics is that this is a grant that you can apply for to get technology or equipment needs purchased. Our funder, Wells Fargo, created this program to build assets and buy assets. So Miami Open for Business grant funds are always used to buy physical assets that you can see and touch. For the technology and equipment grant, this is the third and final year of the Miami Open for Business initiative. So this will be your last chance to try to apply for the grant. We ask that you go to the Submittable website to do so. If you go to miamiopenforbusiness.org, you could potentially start a small business application. So you want to make sure that you're starting an application on the correct portal for your organization type. We have a total to award of approximately $400,000. And so last year we received over 100 applications and we were only able to fund about 30 of those. So just know that in terms of the odds of getting accepted, it's about 1 in 5 applicants who end up applying will be awarded. And so what can you buy with a technology?
Next month.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, welcome everybody. Feel free to put your name in the chat and your organization name, and we can get to know who's on the line today. Thanks for joining. And so in terms of getting an idea of what technology is included, this means things like laptops, cameras, printers, kind of some of your obvious hardware equipment, but it also refers to things like your computer subscription programs, if you need funds to develop a website, if you want to pay for subscription services. We have a lot of nonprofit organizations that are paying for mail subscriptions, CRMs, donor and fund management systems. So if it is software, you can also include that in your request. And then last but not least, we also allow folks to purchase equipment and machinery. So in other contexts, that's looked like furniture, it's looked like kitchen equipment, it's looked like industrial cooking, it's looked like, again, anything that you can deploy in your nonprofit that you can physically touch. Some folks have applied for garden equipment if you have a community garden. So just know that if you can deploy it in your nonprofit and it counts as technology or equipment, you can ask for funding to purchase that. So on the next slide, we'll walk through just how to make sure you're eligible. I feel like Luisana already did a great job of walking through this, but just to make sure everyone who is in the room or who's applying for Open for Business opportunities serves Miami-Dade. The leader of the organization falls into one or more of these categories. Your nonprofit's been around for at least 2 years and you're a smaller nonprofit. We do want to target folks that have $1 million or less in their annual operating budget so that we get these funds out to some of the smallest nonprofits and businesses in Miami-Dade. During this initiative, we are prioritizing applications and organizations that serve specific communities in Miami-Dade County. It's not required to be based in any of these areas, but if you are, we'd like for you to indicate that during the application. And also, if you're outside of these areas, there's no penalty. We still have hundreds of organizations that we've funded outside of these community areas. But if you do work or based in these communities, we do want you to recognize that in the application. So now we're going to get to some of the details in terms of once you create a submittable account, which we will walk through in a moment, how you go about creating a strong application. So you can feel free to keep going. And if you haven't already, we have a downloaded flyer on our site as you're going through the application, making sure step by step that you have everything that you need. This is just a great way to keep track of all those requirements and attachments. Awesome. So now that we've gotten to the application, we'll walk through the very core sections where we can get to know your organization and your leader a little bit better. In the submittable application, there's about 4 core areas. The first of which is where we want to learn about your nonprofit. So we want to know your mission. We want to know what issue area you're in. We love having just a little bit more context about your organization and what you do. And then we'll also ask questions to get to know the lead of the organization better. This includes demographic data, race, ethnicity, gender, what age group, and contact info for the leader of your organization. And then we'll start to ask more questions about the organization itself. So how large are you in terms of your size? How many clients do you serve annually? We also ask a lot of questions about the staff composition of the organization. We recognize that a lot of smaller nonprofits may not have as many full-time paid staff, and that's completely all right. We have an opportunity. We have an open-ended narrative question for you to describe the team that gets your work done. So that can include volunteers, consultants, and contractors. But in terms of any staff that you do pay, you have the opportunity to complete a matrix with each of your staff members and giving a little bit more detail about each of them. And then when we get to the core narrative section, we'll go by question so that you have an idea of what each of these are asking for. But this is kind of the bread and butter, the meat part of the application. This is where you talk about how much money you'll be requesting, what you plan to spend it on, and the impact that it will have for your organization. And this is probably arguably one of the most important sections because we get an idea of what you're going to buy and how you're going to deploy it. So on the next slide, we have question by question. Well, I'll let you guys read for a second what's on the screen, but then I'm going to voice over what actually really helps create a strong application when you're approaching each of these narrative questions. So the first one is around background. The second one is around the purpose of the funds. The third question is around impact, the impact of potentially deploying this asset or this tool, the vision for your organization in the future, and whether your organization has any specific exceptional benefits. So what I really want to do in this opportunity is give you guys some more context in what helps really distinguish a strong application on each of these questions. So the first of which, we cannot necessarily be an expert in everybody's nonprofit, and we want to assess that your organization has a strong program model, you know who your clients are, you know who your community is, and you know what services you're delivering and why you came to offer those programs or services. So in this first question, this is the opportunity to really help you describe who it is that you serve and what it is that you do. If you have any numbers to give context or quantify that, that can be really strong. If you have any attributes, I know a lot of organizations do work in multiple community areas, right? This is where you can talk about those different communities that you serve. And also, what does your programming look like? You know, do you have a summer camp? Do you have a STEM lab? Like, help us really understand your organization and what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis and who you reach on a day-to-day basis. I see some questions that are coming in the chat, and we'll absolutely get to those as soon as we walk through the narrative. And so the second question around purpose, this is where we want to get a sense of what and why you're buying. And this is where specificity is key. So really give us like exactly what audio equipment, exactly what microphones, what are the items you're planning to purchase, and where are you going to get them? Some folks haven't necessarily even looked into how much these assets cost, and they're not exactly sure how they're going to use them. Like, did you have a strategic plan that really highlighted that you're going to move in this direction? Did you get feedback from your clients or your community that you would like some of this equipment upgraded? Like, we really want to understand what is the purpose if we were awarded the funds, how you would get them, the vendor, and how you would use them. In terms of the impact dimension, we recognize that this is, you know, up to a $20,000 technology grant. So it's not exactly going to be, you know, life-shattering, but we do know that there is an opportunity for this to introduce maybe an additional class Maybe this is opportunity to bring on more volunteers, or maybe you can attract a different type of funder if you had this type of equipment. So in the impact section, this is where we really want you to forecast and to quantify what that impact would be if you had these assets in your possession. Maybe, for example, you're launching a STEM lab or a podcast program for the very first time. What types of impacts is that going to have on your organization? And then the vision question, you could say that it sounds really similar to the impact question, but the impact is directly as a result of the asset. The vision is more general to your organization. So what have you historically worked on? Are you looking to go into a brick and mortar, like a rented location ultimately? Are you hoping to expand to a new population? Like, what's the growth trajectory for your organization, for your nonprofit? And how do you see this entire initiative as well as the funding leading into those goals? And then last but not least, we know that all nonprofits have amazing benefits. They serve our communities, they provide critical resources, but help us understand what makes your organization unique. Maybe you have a focus on climate, or you're at the intersection of climate and racial justice. Maybe you're doing something that's really novel in the health education space. Just really unpack even further the benefits or the impacts of your organization and why they make you unique. And so you see the questions as they appear in the application, but giving you a lot more added context about what we're looking for in each of those responses. So now I'll take a second to go to the chat. I see Shakir has a great question about how many clients does your organization serve annually? We absolutely understand that there will be variations annually, and there'll also be variations across programs. What you can do for that one number close-ended question is to put in an average number, and then in the narrative where it says background, include a description of your core programs, then you can get provide a little bit more variation. We serve up to 100 children on average, but that tends to be 50 in our after school program and 125 in the summer. That's a way that you can provide that answer in a number field, but then also give more context when you write your narrative. I see we also have a question from Maria, and absolutely the audio equipment is perfect. That's exactly what we were talking about when we refer to equipment and machinery. And so in a lot of cases, it could be costumes, it could be set design, it could be audiovisual equipment, it could be furniture, it could be ovens and kitchen equipment. And so those items totally count. And in terms of preparing a formal estimate, it is better if you have everything written out in terms of the cost of each of these items. It's okay if you buy those items internationally. There's no requirement that they be purchased in Miami-Dade County, but we do want to get a sense of like how much are the items that you've costed them out, and you have an idea of how much it's going to run you. Versus, we'll pick up a handful of laptops for $5,000 flat. It doesn't have the same level of specificity. Any questions? Yeah, of course. Those are really great questions. I'll pause and see if anything else is coming in the chat. Awesome. I think we can go ahead and keep.
I see one question about needing a formal estimate, and what if it happens that we buy it online? This question is from Maria.
Yeah, absolutely. So as mentioned, you do need to have an idea of what you're planning to buy and have the unit prices for those. There's an optional place in the application where you can attach, but that's not a requirement to submit a vendor estimate. In most cases, people will submit, for example, a screenshot of their shopping cart. They'll submit, just give us an idea that you've costed out what it is that you want to buy, so that you have specific prices for each unit and each make or model of that particular product. Awesome.
I see another one as well, regarding the estimates, from Suom. They're buying their equipment from Brazil.
Yeah, so it's totally fine if you purchase outside of Miami-Dade County, but we do want to get an idea of approximately how much it'll run you. So if you can provide a written estimate in this narrative question where it says purpose, the proposed use of funds, and specifics about what and where you plan to purchase it, that's really helpful. We just want to make sure that you have clarity on what you're buying and why. So for example, saying exactly what percussion equipment, right? What instrument, versus, you know, we will be buying instruments from abroad. It just has a different level of specificity, and we want to make sure that your organization that we're providing the funds to has a plan to procure what you're going to buy. So really great question, Kristen, about purchasing versus renting that we haven't necessarily experienced before. I will say that on the topic of a truck or a vehicle is technically not allowed through the technology and equipment grant because we do have a open for business product that covers vehicles. But I would say, for instance, like a static fridge or freezer, that's something that we definitely encourage you to buy. I have not necessarily seen folks renting appliances for their purposes, but we have multiple grantees that, for instance, have populated their food pantry with shelf freezers, like chest freezers. And so unfortunately the truck is out of the question for the grant, but absolutely appliances such as those, we encourage them. And I see Eileen has a question about what is eligible. I think the best resource is our website. If also we want to navigate to a prior slide, what is covered under the grant is technology and equipment. We are unfortunately with the funder for this initiative, Wells Fargo, we cannot allow the micro grant to cover, you know, training expenses, overhead, rent, salary, utilities, payroll, or anything other than technology assets. And so just know that that's unfortunately, you know, the limitations that were imposed on the funding. And so, Kristen, unfortunately, the other opportunity is not for vehicles. Excuse me, it's not a grant to purchase vehicles. It is a financing opportunity, 0% loan for nonprofits. So, for instance, if you found, you know, a $5,000, $8,000 used truck, you would be able to finance it through ABLE. Thank you. And no, that's totally okay, Eileen. If you want to go back, I think maybe one more, Luisana, and just so that Eileen can see. I think maybe one more. Okay. It's all right. I will make sure that you get it, Eileen. So the first of it is technology, so hardware, software, computer programs, subscriptions, etc. And then the second one is equipment. So that's machinery, tools, furniture, appliances, and what have you. And yeah, so if you're using the grant to pay for CRM and website, if you can afford more than 1 year of subscription as part of your estimate and you're not exceeding the 20,000, you can include more time as part of your software subscription. So for instance, if getting a 3-year CRM is, you know, X $1,000, just enumerate that, and then you can use the funds to purchase it. Really, really, really good questions on what counts and what you can spend it towards. So we hope that you also got a sense of the narrative questions. This is where you will put most of your heart and time into the application, and it helps us get to know your organization a little bit better. So on the next slide, we'll just break down kind of the scoring, or excuse me, sorry, required attachments. We don't require a lot in terms of attachments for this particular grant opportunity, but we do want to see a latest copy of your annual budget. And the best format of the budget for us includes both your expenses and your revenue. And so help us get an idea of not only what you're spending money on every year, where that's going, but also how your organization is bringing in revenue to cover your expenses. It's not required to submit your Form 990, but that's something that can be really helpful for added context about your organization. And then any other supplementary materials. So if you want to submit a proof of vendor estimate, if you want to submit any videos or pictures of your programming in action, that is welcome. In terms of what we look for and how we assess some grant opportunities, we do look a little bit about the background of the organization. So where the organization is physically based in terms of one of those communities that we mentioned at the outset, whether the owner or the leader of the organization, you know, represents multiple aspects of historical or being from a historically underserved population. But we don't want any of these factors to necessarily discourage you from applying. For instance, if you don't have paid staff, or if you're not in one of those historically underserved communities that we highlighted on the map earlier, don't despair. There's still plenty of ways that you can earn points to get awarded the grant. So I think the first and very important is strong financial capacity, which is why we look at the operating budget. We want to get a sense of you're bringing in enough revenue to keep the organization operational. Just understand that we would feel remiss to award funding to organizations that might be not have the longevity or the sustainability to take that asset and continue to use it. And so the other thing that we want to get a sense of is if your organization has a strong organizational capacity, you understand your programs and services, you have a clear idea of your clients and your community, and you're helping to enumerate that to the reviewers who may not know your organization firsthand or may not know the people that you serve. And then also getting a sense of how what you're doing benefits the community, also getting a sense of how the funding might change the trajectory of your organization. Again, we've given a lot of examples. Will you roll out an additional program? Are you going to be able to reach a new population? Are you going to change your hours that you operate, add a new route, et cetera? And then last but not least, having concrete and viable plans to acquire the asset. We want to make sure you know where you're going to buy it, how you're going to use it, and make sure that it makes sense. For instance, if you are a community garden, but you're asking for a CRM system, like help us understand the relationship between better understanding your contacts and how that'll help the community garden grow. So we just want to make sure that things make sense and that we get an idea of who you are and why and how you'll plan to deploy the funding. So this is a lot of detail just about the application itself, about what we look for in a high scoring application. I have at least just one more slide with, showing the differences between a very high scoring narrative and one that did not score as highly. And then we're going to hear from Brenda and the 3 grantees who receive Open for Business funding in prior rounds. So just quickly, getting a sense of why you might experience challenges on the scoring side. We do have organizations that apply for the opportunity despite not being eligible. So we want to make sure that you're really paying close attention to that $1 million in annual org budget based in Miami-Dade County. If you're not physically based in Miami-Dade County, maybe your nonprofit is headquartered in Broward, please make sure that you demonstrate that you serve Miami-Dade County as your primary mission and that your organization's been around at least 2 years. We also want to see folks asking for the correct category, so not using this as an opportunity to ask to purchase real estate or a vehicle or things that are covered by other Open for Business products. And then specificity, I think we've talked about that enough today, so you get a sense of what we're looking for. So now on the actual last slide, we just want you to get a sense of what we have seen in the past. So apologies, the title says small business, but these are actually nonprofit application responses. So we asked them to describe how they'll use the funds, including specifics. And so on the left hand, you can see that at a glance, both of these organizations were looking to fund a tech, some sort of tech component for children. But the one on the left had a lot more specificity about which units and the purpose of buying these units now to increase their inventory, replace what was outdated, give them the ability to charge them on the go. They also tell us exactly who's going to be using them: 60 after-school students, 80 summer camp students. They can also use the technology with seniors and their weekly classes. And so that helps us, like, you have a vision, like, you know exactly what you're going to buy, why you're purchasing it at this juncture, and who's going to be using them. On the right-hand side, we have a really well-meaning response. We know that they're trying to create a robotics and coding program for the students who are in their program, but I don't know exactly what they plan to buy with it. We also are not necessarily sure on the programming that currently exists for those students. And so you can see why a reviewer, when faced with these two very similarly aspiring proposals, may end up going or giving a higher score to the one on the left. So now we're going to segue to the fireside chat component. We will just want to remind you of the deadline. So the grant closes in approximately 1 month. So you have until now to May 31st to submit your application. There are a couple of other funding opportunities in Miami Open for Business, primarily geared towards small businesses. So the low interest loan fund and the real estate offering did end. And so just know that your main deadline to pay attention to now is Friday, May 31st. Thank you so much, Luisana, and everyone for being here. And now we're going to hear from some folks who've already received the micro grant. And if you have any questions in the chat, please feel free to put them in there.
Thank you so much for that, Brittany. And I know for everybody who attended and is here this morning, we shared a lot with you in terms of what we're looking for on the funding side. And it's sometimes a little bit hard to see what the actuality is, you know, beyond pen and paper and beyond the screen. And so we wanted to bring forth some folks who have benefited from our funding. We've now had 2 rounds of funding for the Open for Business program, and in particular with our micro grants. And we wanted them to kind of give their perspective of the process thus far, how it's been going in terms of being able to not only being awarded the funding, but also being able to acquire the asset and deploy it. And so I'm really happy this morning to be joined by Mariella from Venprendedoras, Ruth from FAMSAGE, and Jason from Helping Hands. I will be having questions and a really good conversation with them about how their process has been thus far, moving from, you know, applicants to now receiving the award and being on the end of having some impact because of those assets in their organizations. So I'm going to start off with a question that'll be geared to everybody, and then I'll start to go with some individualized questions, and then we'll close with a question that I'll pose to everyone again. I give this format so that you all can hear the different perspectives of everyone, and you can take away some insights as you all put together your proposals for this round. So my question to Ruth, Jason, and Mariella, and anyone could go first, is how did you decide what to request for funding? We have all of those categories and we've thrown out ideas, but how did you decide, like, what was your most immediate need that you felt, you know, would be a great thing to put in your proposal for the micro grant?
So I'll jump out the window and go first. One of the things that really highlighted this particular grant was the digital divide that we experienced over in Liberty City. If you have any understanding, obviously it's an underserved community, if you're familiar with Liberty City. And one of my concerns of running, we run a nonprofit after school program and summer camp. And one of the things we wanted to do is to have more resources digitally for students. So when I came across the micro grant and it allowed to get hardware and software, this was perfectly aligned for our vision for a digital arts lab to work with our students. So this particular grant for me was very unique because I come from a digital arts background, and I knew that acquiring certain hardware and software would be able to step us up in that digital divide. So now we're getting ready to start our summer camps in June, and we have a brand new digital arts lab that we're ready to unveil with our students. So I'm very excited about that.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to be here and sharing with you all. For us, the important part was the community. We work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, Hispanic and Venezuelan women entrepreneurs, and we needed to increase our reach. So when we decide to apply, we analyze what is gonna advance our mission and our reach. So we invest in, we ask for software and hardware that will help us increase our reach, and also be more apply automations for the marketing plans so we can get to more women to come to our events. And that's exactly what is going on since we get the equipment.
Awesome. And Ruth?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Ruth. My pronouns are she, her, and queen. I am really happy to be here. I'm the founder of a nonprofit called FAMSAGE. And I also have my baby. I'm also a mother. I have 3 beautiful children, but I have my youngest here with me as well. FAMSAGE is a healing justice organization. And so when this opportunity came, and of course, like many of you, I'm sure you all do assessments within your organization around like, what is it that you need, right? And so when opportunities come, or you raise money to write grants to be able to meet the need of that, of your organization. And the reason why we applied for this was because, so FemSage is 5 years old. Well, this year we're 6 years old. And one of the needs that we saw for our organization was that, who's playing with the phone? So one of the needs that we saw was that actually there was a need to communicate what it is that we do in a more effective way. And so the largest communication tool that a lot of young people said that they wanted to do is podcasting. So they were like, oh, we want to be able to talk about the work that we do within FemSage, within communities around restorative justice, around healing, around Reiki and wellness practices with a larger community. And we want to utilize podcasts to do that. And so our youth leadership board made that decision. And then we also thought about what are the ways that we can continue to like raise funds and utilize different ways of being technology to be able to create products. So we are a nonprofit, but we write grants, we ask for donations, we have sustainers, but we are also building like products to be able to like build our organizational revenue. And so the second largest piece of us was like, oh, like, what would it look like for young people to be able to create? For us to, we already see them as entrepreneurs. We see them as circle keepers. We train them to be circle keepers. But the second half of this was that they were now able to gain skills, and they are gaining the skills of actually creating products with an embroidery machine, which is very new for us. So we'll be talking about like what that ride has been. But it's been a beautiful journey so far, and I'm happy to be here with y'all.
Awesome. I want to swing this over to you, Mariella, because we can't believe like 3 years has flown by, like since the creation of this program, and here we are raising awareness for the last round. But for folks such as yourself who have had the opportunity to apply and not necessarily receive the funding the first time, you applied again, and you were able to receive the funding. Could you share a little bit more about what that experience was for you, and what were some changes that you made to ensure that the next time around that you applied, you put yourself in a more favorable position to end up being funded?
Yeah, thank you for this question, because I love this question, and it's the process of learning. And the first year that we applied, we were really not ready, maybe to, but I suggest to everyone that you should start applying, and you will learn in the process of applying and reapplying, and you will get better. Because sometimes as new organizations, you hear that you need a grant writer and you cannot afford a grant writer to apply to this kind of opportunities. And I stimulate everybody to apply. So the first time we weren't specific in our asking. We were asking for a computer, and we just put, we need a computer. So the second time around, we asked for a specific computer, and we explained why we need that computer and the changes it will make in our organization to have that computer. So we focus more on the benefits we will get from the things we were asking for, and also very, very specific. We needed a printer. So I demonstrate if we have the printer, we will save a lot of money we are wasting on a lot of printing material, and we will make more dynamic our events. So I think the most important part is to hear what the funder is asking and follow that lines, because sometimes we don't read the details, and we don't come to sessions like this one. I think this session is great. And maybe the first time around, I didn't went to the session, to the info session, and the second I did. So I think the main difference was actually responding what the funder was asking for and being very, very specific.
I think what I also hear from you as well too is being okay with not having it all together, but still being willing to persevere. You
Mhm.
made sure that you were still connected with us and plugged in and said, "Hey, I want to know like what I can do better for my application." Sometimes it's a not a no, it's just a no, not yet. And even for some folks that on our end, we're gonna have the hard opportunity to have to tell people like, "Hey, unfortunately, we aren't able to fund you. This just happens to be a no, not yet. We're preparing you for other opportunities to come." Thank you, Mariella, for that response. And so I want to go and I see a question in the chat as well too. And I think towards the end we'll have a great opportunity to share like a tie-off event that we're hosting next month to ensure that as we close down the funding opportunity through Miami Open for Business, that folks don't get left off being able to connect with other funding partners to provide access to capital opportunities for you all. So more to come. I'm teasing it a little bit, but more to come in terms of what that event will be next month. And I want to then pass around this question to Ruth in particular. What aspects of your organization did you talk about in your application that you believe like you made it made it allow for it to shine amongst the reviewers?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that we are all like cheerleaders of our organizations, right? And so I think the highlight, what it is that we highlighted was that this wouldn't be something new for us, right? And as far as like a new program or something else, but that it would complement our healing work, and that it would complement the needs that young people within our organization are already wanting. And so I think like highlighting, like there was like a part in the application where it was talking about like our vision for the future as far as like growth. And so we highlighted how this kind of like work would help us to kind of do more and be clearer around like our messaging around like delivering wellness packages, allowing us to like partner with other nonprofits, which this opportunity really has allowed us to do this. So that way, like now the plan is for us to like do partnership and podcasting with other nonprofits who have the same and shared values. We highlighted that we're already doing circle keeping and training young people to become circle keepers. And now this is an opportunity for us as an organization to really not just think of us as a nonprofit, but really like as a social enterprise, right? Like that we're creating like young people are now having youth jobs to now be able to create like another set of tool, right? Of like entrepreneurship opportunities to like make t-shirts and hats and like talk about their work through podcasting, right? And so I think those are the things that maybe helped it to like stick out was like, it is probably hard. I think when we first saw it, we were like, like, what could we do? Like, what is it really that we would apply for? Like, at least like technically, because this is around technology, we're like doing healing and like conflict resolution work. But the piece that we connected around was like, what is it that we're already doing and how can this complement it around the growth and like the vision of this? Of our work for the next 5, 10, 25, 30, 50, 100 years.
Yeah, I'm gonna claim that for you all. What I hear in your response that I think is very key for everybody on this call is as you are filling out the narrative questions, it's important to tell us that you present yourself truly as a subject matter expert in what you all provide in terms of services. A nugget that I'll also share with you all is really explain it from the standpoint of as in somebody doesn't know you or your organization at all. And so this is like the main thing that they'll be able to grasp, like what you're doing, your why behind you're doing it, and your vision, and being able to demonstrate that you are a subject matter expert, a trusted source within the community helps a lot. And so it's something that sometimes you're in the weeds so much, you're like, I don't need to explain this, but You just might be on the end where somebody who just doesn't know anything about you or your organization and what you write just might compel them to say, you know what, I think they're deserving of receiving this funding to keep the work going. So the next question I have is for Jason. And I thought about the questions and I thought you would really shine with this question a lot. And this is, what's been the process of getting the funding and the impact it's had on your org thus far?
So one of the things that impacted us really well, it helped us leverage a new grant that we were able to get for an anti-poverty grant that we just received. And how this helped us is we did a event I think for Art Basel and for Black History Month. And I was able to utilize the digital arts that we created in our after school program to showcase this in our gallery. And at the time, you know, I was just doing this as an event. You know, these are things that we commonly do. But I was able to tie that event into another grant, and we received the grant. I was really excited about that. But, you know, one of the things that I think is really important is how we aligned and utilized the capacity building factor. Two things that I like to put out there is being mindful that, you know, grants and foundations, they're usually looking for sustainability, inclusivity, things of that nature. So that was, you know, really helpful in that we work in a very underserved community, but we also are bringing like innovative, you know, STEAM education and things like that to the community. So it's really helped us leverage and keep other stakeholders at the table. I think that's important because with this, I like to tell people a lot of times that we don't expect people to do the heavy lifting, but we try to bring in partners that have mutual respect and mutual wants in the community to where they can operate together and we can form like an ecosystem to support the education system.
Love that. I love that. So what I hear from your response is that not only was the funding great for you to get the equipment that and software that you identified, you thought about how to leverage it with other folks that are in the same space, offering the same thing as you, and being able to then kind of build out and leverage it for the greater community. And that's what we would like to be able to see. I think it's one thing to get empowered through an opportunity to apply for what your own organization needs, but when you think about leveraging it for other folks in the spaces you really become to leverage your power as a business owner and to effectuate change within the community. And I really love that about what you're doing. So the last question that I have, and I'm going to gear it to everyone, is from your perspective, do you all feel that applying for our micro grant has assisted you with applying for any additional funding opportunities?
Absolutely. I will jump in. Yes, for me, that was our first grant we received. We were super excited and super happy. And that gave me like that stimulate me, encourage me to continue applying for grants, and also to encourage my community to do so as well. After that first grant, we have won another grants. So as I said before, for us, it's been a learning process. With each grant, you learn how to apply, how to convey your message in a more effective way, and how to improve your narrative, your numbers, your budget. So yeah, it was great, and it was absolutely, I encourage everyone to apply.
Awesome. Jason or Ruth?
Sure, I will piggyback from Aurelia. So with us, it definitely helped because some of the grants that we applied for going into the 2024, and some of our stakeholders wanted to know what grants that we applied for last year and what grants that we received. I applied for a lot of grants. Some of them I didn't receive. I was very, very excited to receive the micro grant. from Miami Open for Business, because what it shows is somebody believes in your organization. And I think that is really key, because we know we're out here doing community work, and a lot of times it could be overshadowed. But to have somebody award you and say, hey, we see potential, we see your commitment towards the community, we see your commitment towards sustainability and your overall goal, and they support it and awarded us this grant. That particular grant is allowed us to utilize it, like I was saying previously, and leverage to keep other stakeholders at the table, and also to be awarded additional funding.
Awesome. I love it, love it, love it. Ruth?
A shame. Yeah, same with my colleagues and all of you all. The work that we do is so important, right? Around like sustainable and sustainability of it. And like for us at FEMSAGE, I would say that the micro grant has definitely helped us to expand like what does social entrepreneurship look like when you connect it with social justice. And what that has meant for us is like not only are we like gaining and building opportunities for like getting additional grants, but like it's helping us to connect like what are we applying for. So like now what we're applying for is not just around like circle keeping and healing, but it's around like communication, storytelling, and connecting. And that helps us to now not just apply for grants, but like building networks with other nonprofits that we necessarily wouldn't like tap into, you know? And then it also, now that we're like on this journey, it's helping us to also tell the stories of like not just our own, right, FEMSAGE, but then also tell the stories of other organizations that have the shared values of healing, of justice, and of entrepreneurship as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. What I gathered from that last question, from all of what you all shared, is that the idea of applying for grants or any funding opportunities is daunting, and just because you get one doesn't mean that that daunting feeling goes away. But with each being able to surround yourself in spaces such as this, being connected with other support agencies throughout the county, it allows you to feel a little bit more empowered than you did before to be able to tackle grants. And now you at least kind of get through at least our Miami Open for Business program, get to see a bird's eye view of what, you know, the needs are on a funder, in particular, what they are looking for, what they would like to see from applicants. So I hope for everybody here, this was fruitful as it was for me. And I'm going to ask Jason, Ruth, and Mariella, if you can, to please just drop your contact information in the chat. What I gather from all of you all is that throughout applying, you've experienced a bit of welcoming from other folks in the community. And I gather that you all don't have any issues with at least connecting with other folks to kind of share more about your experience and help them along the way. And so with that, thank you again, Jason, Mariella, and Ruth, for sharing your wisdom, sharing your insight, and inspiring everybody on the call today.